Beneath the ordinary world lies a veil, and behind it, the voices of the lost still whisper.
We are your guides into the shadows, where true crime meets the paranormal.
From chilling crimes to haunted histories, we uncover the stories that refuse to rest.
This is Veil of Echoes.
Three children are dead, and everyone wants the same thing: an answer. Who did this? Was it someone they knew? Someone close enough to walk them there? Someone who watched the woods and waited? Or was it something worse? Someone hiding in plain sight? I don't have time to sit with the uncertainty, because the town is watching. Parents are watching. And fear is starting to ask its own questions. How could this happen here? Who let it happen? Who failed to see it coming? I'm expected to move forward, to narrow the field, to choose a direction before the questions turn inward. I tell myself, this is how investigations work. That pressure sharpens focus. That certainty brings calm. But pressure doesn't care about truth. It only cares that something, someone, is named.
Episode 34, The West Memphis Three, Part 2. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Veil of Echoes.
We're your host. I'm Zach.
And I'm Bria. In Part 1, we focused on the beginning, who the boys were, the night they disappeared, and the place where everything that followed would begin. We stayed with what was known before theories took shape and before conclusions were drawn.
In this episode, we move forward into the investigation, the early decisions, and the pressure to explain something that felt impossible to understand. Before we continue, a brief content warning. This episode discusses the death of children. Before we continue, a brief content warning. This episode discusses the death of children, coercive interrogation practices, and alleged confessions.
We approach this case with care, restraint, and deep respect for the victims and for those who loved them.
Listener discretion is advised.
And if you appreciate the time and care that goes into each episode, please consider following the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening.
Leaving a rating or review helps our indie show reach new listeners and allows stories like this to be told with the space they deserve.
When answers don't come easily, pressure decides where to look first. Before the investigation narrowed, before names became fixed, there were other directions, other possibilities, and other people. In the earliest days after the murders, law enforcement briefly focused on two local men, Chris Morgan and Brian Holland.
Morgan and Holland were known associates. Morgan had lived near the victim's neighborhood and had previously worked routes in the area, including selling ice cream. Reports also surfaced that the two men may have had an altercation with one of the boys earlier that day.
Shortly after the bodies were discovered, Morgan and Holland left Arkansas and traveled to California. That decision drew attention. They were later located and interviewed by police in California. Both denied involvement, but during questioning, Chris Morgan made a statement that would later become significant.
Morgan told investigators that because of the heavy drinking and drug use, he could not clearly remember that night, and said that he might have done it.
But he quickly recanted the statement, saying he did not believe he was involved and had no memory of committing any crime. Polygraph examinations were administered and reportedly indicated deception, results that are not considered definite evidence. Blood and urine samples were also collected and sent back to Arkansas.
No physical evidence linked Morgan or Holland to the crime scene. No charges were filed. And within a short period of time, the investigation moved on. Compared to Morgan, far less attention was paid to Brian Holland. Not because he was irrelevant, but because he was quieter. Holland traveled with Morgan to California and was questioned alongside him. He denied involvement and did not make statements suggesting possible guilt.
Like Morgan, Holland submitted to polygraph testing. Those results were inconclusive and not considered reliable evidence. No forensic evidence tied Holland to Robin Hood Hills, and once the investigation narrowed, his name faded from the case entirely.
There was another encounter on the night the boys were found. One that happened away from the woods, away from the search, and away from the narrative that would soon take place over the case. On the evening of May 6th, 1993, before the boys' bodies were discovered, employees at a Bojangles restaurant in West Memphis became alarmed. A man entered the restaurant and went into the restroom. He appeared disoriented. He was muddy, and there was blood present inside the bathroom. Employees later said, what alarmed them most was how much blood there appeared to be. Enough that it did not resemble a minor injury. Enough that they contacted police immediately.
An officer was dispatched to the restaurant, but by the time police arrived, the man had already left. There was no pursuit, no description broadcast, and no attempt to locate him nearby. At that moment, the boys' bodies had not been yet discovered. The encounter was logged as a strange disturbance, nothing more.
Later that night, after the discovery in Robin Hood Hills, the significance of the Bojangles encounter began to change. An officer returned to the restaurant to collect evidence. By then, the restroom had already been cleaned.
Blood was observed in the Bojangles restroom. An officer scraped samples from the scene, but no photographs were taken of the original condition of the restroom, and there is no clear record that the material collected was ever properly logged, preserved, or submitted for forensic testing. Without a documented chain of custody, there is no way to confirm what happened to those samples, or whether they were ever meaningfully tested at all. Whatever information they may have held was effectively lost the moment standard procedure wasn't followed.
The man was never identified.
No name, no follow-up interview, no explanation for where he came from or where he went. Despite years of public attention on the case, no credible identification has ever surfaced. This does not prove anything, but it represents an opportunity that disappeared.
A muddy, disoriented man with blood present appears in public on the same night 3 children are murdered. And yet, there is no name to attach to him. No explanation to test, no conclusion to reach.
And by the time pressure mounted and focus narrowed, this moment had already slipped past. Whatever it meant or didn't would never be fully known.
Much of what we know about the early leads, including Morgan, Holland, and the Bojangles incident, comes from later investigative reviews and reporting examined in The Devil's Knot. It's a reminder that this case did not begin with certainty. It narrowed into it.
Up to this point, the investigation had not identified a suspect. There was no forensic link, no eyewitness, no physical evidence pointing to a specific person.
What it did have was pressure, a frightened community, national attention, and a growing demand for certainty.
According to later investigative reporting, the direction of this case didn't change because new evidence was discovered. It changed because someone needed to be found.
The teenagers, who would soon become the focus of the investigation, weren't identified through forensic work. They were identified because they stood apart.
They dressed differently, listened to different music, read books others found unsettling. They talked openly about ideas that made adults uncomfortable.
In a conservative, deeply religious community, that difference carried weight. Not as evidence, but as suspicion.
As The Devil's Knot documents, the investigation began moving away from what could be proven and toward what could be explained in a way that felt familiar.
A story about outsiders, about darkness, about evil hiding in plain sight.
It was a narrative the community already understood. And once it took hold, it no longer required evidence to survive. And before we go any further, we want to be clear about something. The teenagers we're about to talk about are innocent. They were wrongfully convicted, and what happened to them was not the result of proof, but of fear, bias, and a system under pressure.
That distinction matters, because this story is not about what they did. It's about what was done to them.
The first of those teenagers was also the one who stood out the most. His name was Damien Eccles. Before he became a name attached to a case, he was a teenager growing up in West Memphis.
Damien's childhood was unstable. His family moved frequently. Money was tight. Home life lacked consistency and emotional safety.
He wasn't especially close to his mother. Their relationship was strained, not explosive, just distant. Damien often felt emotionally alone inside his own home.
By his teenage years, Damien was struggling with significant mental health issues. He was later diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He experienced depression, mood instability, and periods of withdrawal.
In a community with little understanding of mental illness, those struggles weren't recognized as symptoms, but they were seen as warning signs. Damien didn't try to blend in. He dressed in black, listened to heavy metal, read horror and fantasy novels. He was drawn to darker themes, not because he was violent, but because they gave language to emotions he didn't know how to explain.
As documented in The Devil's Knot, those interests quickly became shorthanded for suspicion. Not evidence, but explanation. When investigators began narrowing their focus, Damien was already visible to them. Not because of violence, but because he was different, isolated and already misunderstood.
His name had already begun circulating, not because of proof, but because people talked. Rumors moved faster than facts.
Damien lived near Robin Hood Hills. He had prior contact with police for nonviolent reasons, and in a town desperate for answers, he was easy to point to.
But there was no physical evidence linking Damien to the crime. No DNA, no eyewitnesses, and no forensic connection.
What there was fear, and a narrative ready to accept him. So, do you think if Damien Eccles dressed differently and liked different music or fit in better, that police would have focused on him at all?
Probably not. They're assholes.
Well, no, because, I mean, there's a bunch of other kids in that community. They're all wearing normal clothes. They probably all have long, shaggy hair still. And most of them probably listen to metal music. They just don't walk around with black clothing. So,
yeah.
Just like they've been doing our whole lives, they're pointing out oddballs and trying to make them look like something they're not just because they're uncomfortable with that person.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know.
Especially in that town where they say they're close-knit.
Religious.
Very religious. Not just religious, especially back in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's when people are like beating their children with the Bibles to make sure they understood it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, and these poor kids, just because they're wearing something different and listen to heavy metal music.
Yeah, that's profiling.
Uh-huh. I guess if I was there back in the day, they'd probably accuse me too.
Oh yeah, me too. As I'm sitting here in my black shoes, my black shirt.
Yeah.
My hair's dark, it's not long anymore.
It's messed up. I feel so bad for this.
And my whole playlist, 48 gigabytes of my phone is metal, death metal, metalcore, like heavy metal, like anything from the 80s to 2026.
Yeah, so therefore they were just trying to pick some people that weren't like them. Honestly.
Oh no, I can tell you right now, if we went back in time with the t-shirts and the bands we listened to, they would have definitely probably executed us on the spot.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, these guys listen to Metallica. It's like, yeah, but have you heard Lamb of God?
I know, that's stupid.
Like, do you know anything about Signs of the Swarm? Immortal Disfigurement?
I just can't imagine being like in those poor boys' like
Slaughter to Prevail.
Like being in their shoes though during that time and be like, what?
Yeah, because it's a very confusing situation. I'm just here hanging out with my buddies in my trailer. We just came back in from riding bikes and skateboarding, and because we got long hair, dressed in black, and listen to metal, we're automatically your suspects when you had a crime scene that you failed to investigate.
Yeah, the Bojangles incident.
So all because of these cops and investigators were terrible, you condemned 3 lives for 18 years. You should get 18 years taken off yours.
Well, not only that, the police officer who lost the blood samples from
That's
the
what I'm saying, all
Bojangles
of them.
incident.
The courthouse, the police station, the investigators, they're all guilty. They all worked together to pin this on these 3 kids to calm down their community. You people need to get out more and see the world, and maybe you wouldn't judge people based on their clothing and music choices.
Yep.
There's people, it's not the music promoting violence.
Nope. But still, like, who cares what you listen to?
But they also have, I don't know if it's because of that, but they have the, for Justice for All?
Yeah.
So, I mean...
Well, like I said, that's pretty much what they did to poor Eddie Munson on Stranger Things. Damien's distance from his family did not make him dangerous. His interests did not make him violent, and his mental illness did not make him guilty.
They made him vulnerable. And vulnerability is often mistaken for guilt when fear is in control.
Once Damien was in their sights, the investigation didn't widen. It narrowed. Jason Baldwin didn't stand out the way Damien did, but he didn't fully blend in either.
Jason was quiet, reserved, the kind of teenager who kept his head down and stayed close to the people he trusted.
He grew up in West Memphis in a relatively stable home. He was especially close with his mother.
Home was structure, rules, expectations, consistency. Jason followed them.
Jason wasn't aggressive, he wasn't loud, and he didn't seek attention.
People who knew him described him as polite, respectful, and thoughtful.
He avoided trouble, and he did what was expected of him.
Like Damien, Jason loved heavy metal music. He wore black t-shirts, listened to bands many adults in the community didn't understand.
But for Jason, those things weren't statements. They weren't rebellion. They were just who he was.
Jason was loyal to his friends, especially to Damien Eccles.
And that loyalty mattered, because once Damien became a suspect, anyone close to him came under scrutiny. Unlike others in this case, Jason never confessed. He never changed his story.
He asked for a lawyer. He stopped answering questions. He maintained his innocence from the beginning.
Jason Baldwin matters in this story because he disrupts it. He didn't give investigators what they wanted.
But that didn't remove him from the case.
It simply placed him inside it. Jessie Misskelley was different. Not in the way Damien stood out, and not in the quiet, controlled way Jason moved through the world.
Jessie wanted to be liked. He wanted approval, and he wanted to do the right thing, even when he wasn't always sure what that was.
Jessie grew up in West Memphis in a working-class family. Life was inconsistent, money was tight, and structure wasn't always there.
School was difficult for Jessie from a young age. Learning didn't come easily. Instructions were confusing. Abstract ideas were hard to grasp.
He repeated grades, spent much of his school life in special ed classes. Not because he didn't try, but because he needed support he rarely received. One of the most stable relationships in Jessie's life was that with his father.
They were close. Jessie trusted him, relied on him, especially when things felt overwhelming or confusing.
His father understood Jessie's limitations. He knew Jessie wanted to please people, and he knew he could be easily influenced.
Jessie's intelligence was formally tested. His IQ was measured at approximately 72.
And that placed him in the borderline range of intellectual functioning. He struggled with complex questioning, timelines, understanding when adults were steering him.
He was highly suggestible and eager to please authority figures.
Jessie wasn't violent. He wasn't aggressive. People who knew him described him as friendly, talkative, and trusting.
He wanted to help. He wanted to cooperate. He wanted to do what he thought was expected of him.
Jessie's vulnerabilities were not subtle. They were visible, and they mattered. Jessie wasn't dangerous. He was vulnerable.
And vulnerability becomes something else entirely when it's placed inside an interrogation room.
When Jessie Misskelley sat down with investigators, he did not understand what was happening to him.
He wasn't told he was a suspect. He wasn't told he could leave. And he wasn't given a lawyer.
Before Jessie ever gave a recorded statement, he was given a polygraph exam.
He was told he failed.
That result wasn't treated as a tool. It was treated as proof.
Jessie was told the machine showed he was lying, that he needed to be honest. that cooperating would help him.
He was questioned for hours. The vast majority of that time was not recorded.
What we hear today, the tape that later played for juries, captures only a small portion of what actually happened in that room.
He struggled with complex and leading questions, struggled with timelines, and struggled to know when adults were steering him towards specific answers.
When he got details wrong, investigators corrected him. They fed him information. They told him when he was getting closer.
When Jessie first described the murders, he said they happened during the day.
That timeline didn't match the evidence, so investigators corrected him.
After that correction, Jessie changed his statement. The time shifted from daylight to after dark. And Jessie also got basic details of the crime scene wrong.
He described the bindings used on the boys as brown rope.
But they were white shoelaces.
That wasn't a minor discrepancy. It was a visible, physical detail at the scene.
Someone who was there would not likely mistake it.
Instead of stopping the interrogation, those inconsistencies were ignored.
And just like the timeline, just like the locations, and just like the shifting details. Years later, experts would point out that Jessie's interrogation followed a well-documented pattern.
According to the Innocence Project, false confessions are far more likely when a suspect is young, cognitively limited, and questioned without safeguards.
Those individuals are more likely to repeat details given to them, agree with authority figures, and say whatever they believe will end the interrogation.
Jessie Misskelley fit every one of those risk factors.
And Jessie would later recant, more than once.
But the damage was done. The investigation now had what it believed it needed.
And once those words were spoken, they couldn't be taken back. Jessie's interrogation wasn't the only thing that reinforced the narrative police were building.
Shortly after Jessie's statement, a woman named Vicki Hutchinson came forward to police.
Hutchinson claimed that Jessie told her disturbing things, including that Damien Eccles drank blood and participated in ritualistic behavior.
There were no recordings of these conversations, no physical evidence, and no independent corroboration.
Hutchinson's statements changed over time. Details shifted, and new elements appeared.
Many of the things she described were already circulating publicly through rumor, media coverage, and fear.
Investigative reporting would later raise serious concerns about Vicki Hutchinson's credibility.
According to reporting by the Arkansas Times, key parts of Hutchinson's story were contradicted by records, timelines, and her own prior statements.
Journalists found no independent evidence to support her claims, and no confirmation that the conversations she described ever happened as she said they did.
The reporting ultimately described her statements as unreliable, and in some cases, a complete fabrication.
Which I do know, years later, she did say it was completely fabricated.
So aggravating. Why go through all this trouble to get these boys incarcerated when they've done nothing wrong? You guys are just throwing sticks to throw shit.
Yeah, I know. Well, apparently, what Vicky said was she was gonna get a reward. She was hopeful for a reward.
Yeah, she should have been arrested right there on the spot after admitting that she falsely blamed these boys for doing this. Like I had a conversation. He probably never talked to that girl.
She also said the police steered her to safety.
Well, that I don't doubt. They steered this whole thing into the narrative that these boys murdered 3 boys and left them in the water and stuck their clothes, tied them up, beat them.
Well, I mean, that was true.
Well, that was true, but none of the evidence points to them.
No. There's no evidence that pointed them to be at that spot.
That's what kills me, is like she's just sitting here throwing stuff at the wall hoping for a reward.
Mm-hmm. But her claims still did something critical. They transformed a flawed confession into a narrative.
And once that narrative existed, it didn't need proof. It only needed repetition.
Jessie Misskelley was arrested first.
Not because of physical evidence, and not because of eyewitnesses, but because of what he said in the interrogation room.
The confession came first, and the arrest followed. When police came to arrest Damien Eccles, it wasn't the night of the murders. It was nearly a month later, in June.
That night, both Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin were arrested. They didn't find them running. They didn't find them hiding. They found them at home.
Sitting inside the house, watching a horror movie. No urgency, no panic, no attempt to disappear.
It's a detail that would later be repeated again and again. Not because it proved anything, but because it fit what people already believed about them.
So if a confession is shaped by pressure, correction, and vulnerability, and then reinforced by unverified claims, should it ever be treated as truth at all?
No. The very fucking moment they were sitting there listening to those investigators direct him towards the answers they wanted him to have, the answers they wanted him to give to them so they could pin it on these 3 to get the frantic satanic panic over with, was all bullshit. There's no way this case should have ever made trial. It was all just a blatant, let's put these boys away because these people already believe it, so we won't have to dig too much more into it.
Well,
and it worked for 18 years.
They, I think they interrogated him for 12 hours.
12 hours, and only maybe an hour of it, or maybe a little more than an hour of it was actually recorded.
Yeah.
So yeah, and even listening to it, you can hear he's like, well, I was, and they're like, no, it was nighttime. He's like, yeah, it was dark. I'm like, what the wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, at least, don't be saying it on while you're being recorded, too.
Well, they fed off his vulnerability and then his IQ, unfortunately, too.
He's oblivious to anything that's going on. He's a people pleaser. He just wants to be liked. These boys were under 18, correct?
They were 18.
Oh, okay, so.
Jason was 16 when he was 16. Jessie was 17 and Damien was 18.
So that right there, at least Jessie and Jason should have had a parent or guardian present when being interrogated by the police.
Well, Jason always asked for his lawyer and stuff, though.
Well, that was good, but I'm saying the other two, Jessie especially, since you said he was the youngest?
No.
Or he was 17. So yeah, he's still considered
but
a
he didn't.
minor.
I don't think he realized, though.
Well, no, you're not going to when they catch you off guard. They didn't tell him, like we stated earlier. They brought him in, not telling him he was a suspect in a homicide, and then started interrogating him. So he's sitting here like, oh, I'm just here. What's up, guys? What do you need from me? And trying to help out and be a good Samaritan. And next thing you know, he's just getting this whole script thrown at him, and this is what you're going to say. This, and I know they didn't directly say that to him, but you guys need to listen to the interviews and the investigations that they're doing with this guy, and you can hear the whole time them leading him right to the words they want. Every single step, like they were drawing out a map and writing the words for him, and he was just supposed to say it.
Yeah, I feel bad for him.
Me too. It's like, man, it's absolutely 18 years wasted.
I know.
That's 18 years those guys could have put into helping fucking try to solve who killed these boys in their town. Because as it seems, was it Jason that became the lawyer?
I don't know if he really did.
He went to law school or something?
He wanted to, yeah.
Well, he looks like he's very active in the community of this stuff right here. Like,
yeah,
he's trying to help innocent people be proven innocent and get out and not sit there for 18 years like he did. Like,
right, exactly.
He didn't even want to blame the one other person they had DNA from on these bodies when they were found. Because he said, I don't want to falsely accuse anybody without evidence.
Exactly.
Because that's what happened to me, and I served 18 years. He got his teeth knocked out. He said he had his jaw broken while he served those 18 years.
It's awful. With Jesse's word in hand and a story now forming, the investigation stopped looking outward and turned toward the courtroom. From this point forward, the case no longer needed answers. It believed it had them.
3 teenagers were now tied together by a story that formed before evidence ever caught up. One confession, no physical proof, and a narrative the town already understood.
Questions stopped being asked, doubts were set aside, and inconsistencies were no longer obstacles. They were inconveniences. Next Monday in Part 3, the story moves beyond the interrogation room, and we'll examine how fear became evidence.
How testimony replaced proof, and how a narrative, once accepted, became nearly impossible to challenge.
And before we close this chapter, we want to tell you about something important. This Saturday, we're launching a new series called Missing Veil Files.
These are real cases, real people, and families still waiting for answers.
Missing Veil Files focuses on cases that never got the attention they deserved. Cases that slipped through the cracks, were overlooked, or quietly forgotten.
If you know of a missing persons case that needs visibility, or if your family is still searching, we want to hear from you.
Because stories like the one we told today remind us what happens when voices aren't heard. And sometimes, attention is the difference between silence and answers.
This Friday, we step away from this case and into ancient lore that's been misunderstood, sensationalized, and feared for generations.
Skinwalkers. Until next time, keep your ears open
And the veil closed.